good to be here this afternoon. You know, when I first moved back to Des Moines about 6 months ago, and I was living in Chicago at the time and was working in the fashion industry, and they asked me, so you're moving back to Iowa, blank pause, how do you wear those heels on the farm? And I said, without missing a beat, very carefully. I'm here today to talk about food. And I'm going to talk about global food, I'm going to talk about local food, and how that relates to all of us here today. Now, you might want to ask, what are my credentials? Well, I don't have that many if you look at it on my resume. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a policymaker, I'm not an economist, although that was my major. I'm a 27-year-old woman who is very passionate about food, and I sort of took a very roundabout way of getting there. I graduated from the University of Iowa in 2004. And then I went on to become an investment banker in Chicago and Hong Kong. Then I moved back to Chicago and went into publishing, started my magazine, which is focused on women empowerment. And then circumstances happened and all the stars aligned that I happened to come back to Des Moines over Thanksgiving. And they asked me I went to say hi to the folks at the World Food Prize since they've known me since in high school. And out of that, I got a job. So, and I realized it was time for me to sort of, as we've been talking about repurposing and taking that initiative to branch out and do something that you're passionate about. And I realized that I was very passionate about development, about food, about hungry people in the world. And that's why I'm back here in Des Moines and I'm working at the World Food Prize. I want you to take a look at this picture. I think images really speak louder than words. And when you think about how does all the unrest in the Middle East affect me, how did the Arab Spring arise? And this is a picture taken of Tahrir Square in Cairo during the Arab Spring around Egypt, in Egypt back in February. And these people are protesting, and it started out by a vegetable vendor in Tunisia, and it spread. And now why did it spread? What are these people protesting about? And if you go politics aside, the quest for democracy, all that aside, at the end of the day, it was about the price of bread. And that played a big role in how angry people got. People were very angry because if the price of cereal here goes up by 10 cents as a proportion of our income, it's very negligible. But when majority of the world is living off of less than $1 or $2 a day, that nominal increase plays a big role in dropping them from poverty to even more destitute situations. If you desire peace, cultivate justice, but at the same time, cultivate the fields to produce more bread. Otherwise, there will be no peace. And that is at the basis of this philosophy that bread cultivates peace. This was said by the founder of the World Food Prize, the 1970 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, and a native son of Iowa, Dr. Norman Borlaug. And we'll get back to this philosophy as we go on. What is the problem? There are so many complex issues related to global food security. And let's break it down into what we need to know. I call it the 911 problem. What is the issue? Right now, the population is a little over 6 billion. By 2050, we have 9 billion mouths to feed. That's 3 billion more. Currently, 1 billion people, that's one out of every 6 people, are hungry. To add to that, 1 billion people are overweight. Now, if you think of that as two sides of an equation, because it's all about food. Now, who is being affected by this, and who can really affect change? Say everyone eats, and at the World Food Prize, in October, we bring everyone together for our symposium. We bring everyone together for a dialogue to talk, and sort of bringing people to the table. And I love to eat, and I like to bring people to my table to talk. And why is this important? Because everyone eats, and so if you don't think it affects you, if you eat, it affects you. Everyone is a stakeholder. Now, I've been all over the world, and I want to take you to some places that I've been to sort of illustrate this problem. This is a maize field in a very remote part of Kenya, along the shores of Lake Victoria. And you can see, well, what are some issues that we see with cultivating, and why are people suffering from food insecurity there? Well, you can see there's, at this time this picture was taken, this was back in 2002, there was a drought going on. And even if they harvest a crop, you can see what kind of storage facilities they have. Even, I'm not sure if some of you saw the BBC article a few months ago that said that over 50% of the world's crop, vegetable crop, after being harvested is wasted, is lost due to the transport, due to lack of transport and lack of storage facilities. That's a big hindrance. So it's not just about putting a seed into the ground and watching it grow, and then voila, we have bread for everybody. There are so many steps along the value chain, and if one step is broken, for example, lack of storage, lack of roads, then it is all impacted at the end, it is all impacted as consumers. This is my friend Mrs. Ouso. I used to go and visit her farm when I was at the International Center of Insect Physiology and Ecology. The first time I went there, I was 16. The World Food Prize sent me as one of the first Borlaug Rubin interns. And Mrs. Ouso is a remarkable woman. In a place where it was a very patriarchal society, where men controlled the household income, she was able to become a community leader. Why? Because the men were able to see there was an economic advantage. She was a farmer. She grew a modest acreage, but she was part of our pilot project on Pushpull Management. And what is Push-Pull? It's a very simple but very ingenious plan to use local varieties of pest and weed plants that suppress weeds and suppress stem borers, which is the local pest variety. And by using that without chemicals, without pesticides. And with that, she was able to generate income because she had a healthier crop. And from that, she was able to buy a dairy cow. And with that, she was able to sell the milk at the local market. And she was able to then produce more and give back to the community. And now she's a leader teaching other farmers who travel from miles and miles in workshops to come learn from her and how she did it. This is something that is so important about growing food. Like I said, it's not just about putting a seed into the ground and watching it grow. It's about education. Because without capacity, without training, you don't have the adequate knowledge amongst the farmers to really be able to optimize their yield. This is a local farmers group, and it was in Mbita, Kenya. And it consisted of both men and women farmers throughout the community. It was a cooperative, and so they would put in a little portion of their savings every month to pool to buy supplies, to buy inputs like fertilizer. This was something that the extension officers from the local government came in to teach them about that day. And it cost $2, 200 Kenyan shillings, and it's a small little metal silo. Now, why is this so important? Well, if you remember back to the picture that I showed you before, the harvest was lost because of rats getting into the makeshift wood storage facility. Now with these, they are easily able to put these in small little capsules, store them around the house, and also take them to market. And it's very simple, $2. This is a picture of the Selfhelp group. And they were so proud to be able to show me what they were doing and to show me what they were generating from that. And they host a lot of other farmers groups that come and learn from them. So it's all about this training and this keep passing it on, this extension, as we call it. So this is Mrs. Ouso's farm. And you can see back there, there's the extension that's being held. Now I want you to take a look at this plot here. You'll see this long stem grass, that's called Napier. And Napier is a local variety of grass, and what they do is they plant it outside the perimeter of the push-pull maize field. Then they plant Desmodium, which is a type of legume. They intercrop it with the maize. Now why are these two plants, Desmodium and Napier, why are they so important? Well, Napier submits a secretion that attracts stem borers. And so it pulls the stem borers, the pests, away from the maize and onto them, and then the pests die from the secretion. Now, what does the desmodium do? The desmodium kills striga. Now, what is striga? Striga is a very beautiful purple plant, and it's a pest. When I first came and I saw the fields full of purple, and I was like, oh my God, that's beautiful. What kind of flower is that? And they said, no, that is why we're suffering. That is why our harvest isn't up to par. It's because of striga, or as the locals call it, kayongo. It's one of the biggest problems in sub-Saharan African agriculture, especially in Eastern Africa. So the desmodium kills the striga, and it also is a nitrogen fixer. So it makes the maize more healthy. So with these two together, they form the push-pull system. And that's how Mrs. Owusu is able to manage her crops without having to put expenses aside for chemical pesticides. And this is one of the very simple ways that farmers here are working to help other farmers practice and learn about this technology. This is something very simple, and it's water. And I've been to a lot of places where it's very dry and very arid. And you go to a lot of poor countries, and as some of you have traveled to developing countries, sometimes you have people coming up and asking you, for money, for change, for things like that. I've had people ask me for a lot of things. The most that people have asked me is not money, not bread, but water. And it's something that's very simple, yet so many villagers along this lake area didn't have access to water. And so that's why it was so important for them to develop their own local village well. This top left one is in a village that I worked in Ghana, and this one is a catchment in Kenya. And just having that in your local facility means that women who do all the agriculture work, they don't have to trek for miles and miles and miles to get water. They can access it locally, so they save time, they save energy, and they can become more productive. Now, this woman represents the future of Africa. She's holding her baby girl, and that's why maternal health is another important and human nutrition is a very important part of agriculture and feeding people. Is the first 1,000 days. Is the baby has to be make sure that they have plenty of nutrition in order to be sustained for the rest of their life. Health, another important aspect. It's not just about growing something from the ground and eating it. From all the stages, you need to worry about roads, like I talked about, but also about health. This is a local AIDS demonstration that we worked with. Where I was, the HIV infection rate was about 25%. That's 1 out of every 4 person was infected. And that not only meant that they were affected, but their families. There were so many orphans. And that affected the local economy, that affected agricultural productivity, because if you're sick, you can't work. And so just basic knowledge, everything plays a big part and is a key to the puzzle of how do we feed people. You have to make sure they're healthy as well. Technology. The power was out. This was in the village I worked with in Ghana. And we rushed to the store. Togbi on the right, he's the village chief, and he said, Bian, come with me. And I was like, where are we going? He's like, we have to go buy batteries. I'm like, why? The power is out, And he said, well, we can use our cell phones, but I need my flashlight to be able to see because we need a charge. And he said, everything has to do with the cell phones. That's how they kept in touch. Even in places where there was no running water, no electricity, they had cell phones. Now, we're back to Iowa. 1914, a man by the name of Norman Borlaug was born, and he started out in very humble beginnings. He got a wrestling scholarship to go attend the University of Minnesota, and from that, he would go on to become the man who has saved more lives than any human being that has ever lived. This is a picture of him when he was working in Mexico, and that's what started the Green Revolution. When he was 30 years old, he went down to Mexico, And for years, he would work tediously beside the farmers who were suffering from very poor conditions, drought, and everything to try to improve their yield. And he developed this hybrid wheat variety, this high-yield wheat that would go on to become the product that would save Pakistan and India from starvation. And that's what we call the Green Revolution. Now, Dr. Borlaug always used to say, roads, roads, roads. And these are two examples of different circumstances, one with a paved road. This is in the village in Ghana, and the village was split up in several different places. There's actually a chicken crossing that. There would be access, and they were able to get to the market in less than 20 minutes. Here in Lake Victoria, there was no paved roads, and a road that would normally take 20 minutes to go through, it would take 2 hours depending on whether it was washed out or not from the rains. So just thinking about the accessibility, if you have a product, a harvest, how easy is it to take it to the market? This is another native son of Iowa, John Ruan, who started from humble beginnings too, also born in 1914. And he started the Ruan trucking empire just from one truck. And he's a big believer in downtown Des Moines. And he saved the prize 3 years after the original sponsors pulled out. And that's why the World Food Prize came back to Iowa as the home. He always dreamed about making Iowa the food capital of the world. So we've had a variety of different laureates, all from a variety of different backgrounds, because as you've seen from the pictures, everyone plays a part in food security. You have M.S. Swaminathan, who was our first laureate, who was a colleague, and Dr. Borlaug served as a mentor to him in high-yield wheat. Mohammed Yunus, who pioneered Grameen and the notion of microcredit, and people like Dr. Hans Herren, who pioneered sustainable agriculture. Catherine Bettini, former head of the World Food Program, looking at humanitarian aid. And school feeding with George McGovern and Bob Dole. And Gabisa Jeddah, sorghum breeder. So now this year, we're talking about the next generation, and I think it's quite apropos that I'm here today to talk about the next generation with you, looking at how do we take the initiative to go from what has been achieved in the past Green Revolution to the future. And this year we're talking about what are the next challenges, next generation of challenges. You know, we have climate change, we have so many different types of challenges that we're dealing with. How do we develop the next generation of leaders, and who will they be? And what types of next generation models of solutions and technologies can we put our minds together to build and to move forward? And this year's laureates are the former presidents of Brazil, Lula da Silva and Kufuor of Ghana. Now, how do Iowans play a part in this? Each year we hold the Iowa Hunger Summit. And the Iowa Hunger Summit is where we gather all the community groups that work on fighting hunger, both in Iowa and abroad. And it's a celebration of their work and what they do. And we have a hunger banquet. We serve meals that Iowan organizations pack up and deliver to other countries. And the next generation is all about youth. And Dr. Borlaug's legacy was about educating the youth. And here you see we have a variety of different programs, including the Borlaug Ruan internship, which I mentioned that I was so fortunate to be a part of as a bright-eyed, idealistic 16-year-old. And we send them all around the world. And this year we launched with USDA the Wallace Carver internships. And here you can see Dr. Henry A. Wallace, founder of Pioneer, and George Washington Carver, who are very prominent in the history of agriculture of Iowa, and who we have a variety of different programs named after. Now, this is about repurposing. This is a 104-year-old old Des Moines Public Library, as many of you are aware. And we are in the process and almost finished with repurposing it for the next generation to serve as a museum and educational facility to educate young people about the importance of agriculture, that food doesn't just come from the supermarket, and that they can be inspired at our Hall of Laureates by knowing that, even if you're not an agriculture expert, you can become a policymaker, you can become a business leader, an entrepreneur that can all work together to fight hunger. And one of the most striking things about it is that it is going to be certified LEED Platinum, which is almost unheard of for a building of this historical magnitude. And that's something that we want to be responsible in educating the youth, and therefore we have to be responsible how we take care of our local surroundings and our community. And that's why we were so ambitious about doing the LEED Platinum. Now, how? If you look at what I talked about earlier, everyone eats. Everyone is responsible. How do you solve that problem? E is for empowerment, and not just talking about women empowerment in Africa, but empowering yourselves here. It's about education on all levels. I wouldn't be here if Iowa State didn't give my father a scholarship to come from China to study. And that's how I came to Iowa. So that's why education is so important. And all of these, agriculture, access, alliances, awareness, make yourself aware, talk, and that's one of the most important T's. Technology, tools. We need to talk, tell your friend, get informed. I'm not here to tell what you should think about your food and what you should do. I'm here to encourage you and advocate that you need to be informed of the issues. And get away from the talking point. So many times when we hear about food issues in the media, global record price spikes in food and everything, it's all on one end or the other. Get away from the hyperbolic statements and really be educated about the issues and what you can do. Mother Teresa once said, do what you can with what you have where you are. And we're here, we're now, and that's why it's so important to not just know about the issues, but also take action. I leave you with a quote from Dr. Norman Borlaug: "Food is the moral right of all who are born into this world." So when you want to ask why we're doing this, there are many different answers to many different people. But I think this is most poignant because food is not an agriculture issue, it's not a health issue, it's not a political issue. At the end of the day, it's a human issue. It's a social justice issue. And we are all humans, we all eat. And we are all born with the right to secure food in the world. And thank you very much.